Okay, my lovelies, hello and welcome to the Yoga Teacher Collaborative podcast. This is the live recording of the podcast right here in the Yoga Teacher Collaborative Facebook group, or for those of you that are listening to the podcast recording via Spotify, welcome, hello, I am so pleased you're here. Today we are talking frameworks for sequencing, lesson planning your yoga classes. Yoga class sequencing is something I adore. It is about crafting a journey. I am not the kind of yoga teacher that walks into the room without a plan and just starts moving. There is a place for planning. There is a place for spontaneous creativity, adapting to the vibe and energy of a class, but they do not have to be separate. And I love to plan. Now, that doesn't mean I've planned out every single pose, every single transition. Often I have, but you don't have to. But it means I know the journey we're going on. I know the intention. I know what we're exploring. I know the layers of different meaning, and I can bring so much depth and educational content to the classes interwoven with the movement, the asanas, the meditation. And that is what I want to share with you today in this episode on lesson planning for ease and a stress-free existence as a yoga teacher. A lot of people do expend a lot of energy, excess energy, in the process of crafting their lessons, of them being really head in the paperwork rather than energy and heart in the class with your students. So I'm hoping today that I can give you a framework, that you can take that framework to pen and paper, and then you can let that framework live in you as well when you are teaching, that you're not having to look at your lesson plan all the time because the framework is in you, because this has come out of you. I would love you to implement and play with this framework. So I have created a downloadable PDF of this exact framework. So listening to this podcast today should give you some inspiration. It could give some nuance and talk it through. But to actually make this practical, tangible, actionable, you need the framework in your hands or on your computer. So I have made the framework. If you are listening to this live on Friday, the 22nd of August at 10:36 a.m., I have not yet pressed the upload button on my website for you to then download the framework. I just ran out of time, but it will be there within the hour. If you are listening to any of this on replay or on Spotify, the framework is ready for you to download. So to download the framework, you need to go to my website, which is, of course, www. Do you remember when we used to have to say World Wide Web? Do you remember when it didn't exist? Oh, I remember when it didn't exist. And then it was always like www. or World Wide Web. Anyway, off tangent, put that little prefix in. And then it's lauragreenyoga.co.uk/framework. Nice and simple. World Wide Web dot lauragreenyoga.co.uk/framework. I am going to put a screen share on as well. So those of you that are watching the video, there's a video on Spotify and there is the video in the Facebook group. At least you can see me talking you through it. But don't worry if you're just doing this on audio, because you're going to go download it anyway. So this is your guide to yoga class sequencing framework, so you can plan classes with more depth and more meaning in less time. Win-win, right? More depth, more meaning in less time and less admin. So, first of all, We start with picking your theme, picking your muse. I don't want to start with a blank page and go, what am I going to do today? Fear of the blank page is a real thing. So let's not have fear of the blank page. And we don't want generic yoga classes. We want yoga classes that connect to your soul. And choosing your theme is where you get to do that, where you get to bring in your knowledge, your passion, your inspiration, your uniqueness, your heart comes into the themes, how you see the world, what tickles you. I adore yoga teachers' themes. I remember, as you know, done a 200-hour yoga teacher training. So in my yoga teacher training course, my trainees cover sequencing a lot and theming a lot. And their final practical exam is to teach a full, fleshed out 60-minute class with a theme, with everything we're going through today. And I remember, was it last year? Yeah, last year, one of my lovely trainees, Claire, she had this theme and it was about dandelions. And she said how a dandelion takes us through all the journeys of the celestial world. We start with the dandelion as the yellow flower that represents the sun. And then that yellow flower goes to its little seed head, and that represents the moon. And then as the seeds come off the seed head and flitter about, that represents the stars. Oh, as she explained that theme, not only did she bring me into the magical way she sees the world, she changed forevermore how I will look at a dandelion. And then she dried little dandelions and put them into little pots. It was magical. Class theming is magical. So some people they're constantly inspired. There's constantly something tickling them, some muse that they want to then share. But some days, we sit down and we're like, oh, what's my theme for the week? So I've given you in your yoga class sequencing framework 4 possible theme categories just to tickle your mind on those days there's nothing naturally coming, to help you select the theme. By all means, journey way outside these categories. But category 1 was physical and anatomical. So maybe your class is structured on a focus around the hips, shoulders, spine, or core, or something else. But then I'm giving you a prompt. What's the deeper intention with that? So I'm not just going to today's class as a focus on hips. So it could be today's class is focusing on the hips, but specifically how we explore creating a balance of stability and mobility. Or today's class is on the spine and how we explore moving in the 4 different directions: flexion, extension, side bending, and rotation and circumduction. Or today's theme is on the core and how we create functional core strength through transitions. So I'm always going to prompt you to take that theme one step deeper, one step more intentional, one step more precise. So maybe it's physical and anatomical. Prompt, what's the deeper intention? Another category, I named it cosmic and cyclical, but basically, what's going on in the seasons? Are we navigating a shift in seasons? What's going on in the moon phase? What's going on? Is it a solstice? Is it an equinox? What's going on in the planetary movements? If this talks to you, then prompt. We're not just going to go, today is a full moon class, but what is the deeper intention? What's shifting in the sky, the season, and how is it making you feel? How is that inspiring you? Another category, philosophical and spiritual. This could be within the realm of yoga philosophy, yogic teachings, or anything else that is connecting, resonating with you. So e.g., it could be the yama and niyama. It could be teachings from the Bhagavad Gita. It could be exploring key philosophies like moksha. What does that mean? This morning I taught a class on cultivating peacefulness. Then prompt, Let's go deeper. Which teaching is speaking to you most right now? What are you and your students navigating through that a piece of philosophy or spirituality could support you to navigate that? And then the fourth category I've given you is the subtle body. So the realms of chakras, and no, that is not a spelling mistake. Chakras, gunas, koshas, nadis, something from the yogic subtle body. Prompt: what do you love about this? Why did you pick one of the gunas? What do you love about it? How do you feel it? How do you experience it within you? When we're teaching about the subtle body, it's not about what we learned in a textbook. It's about, yes, what did I read in a textbook? And then how have I been working with that myself? And how have I felt that embodied through me so I can teach from that embodied place rather than abstract scholarly place? So, step one, pick your theme. There's 4 different categories of themes there to help you on the days you're feeling uninspired on selecting a theme. But go wild. You do not have to stay within these categories, my loves. So then the next box, what is my class theme? What is my purpose and deeper intention for this? Step 1, framework, done. 2, none of this is essential. This is just my process, so you can take or leave something that doesn't work with you. But step 2 for me, 70% of the time maybe, is to select a mudrā. So mudras are hand gestures or seals that contain an energy, but they also focus the mind. And when your mudra relates directly to your theme, every time you return back to that mudra in a class, it is giving you a chance to embody that theme in a tiny seed form. So this morning I was teaching the theme of cultivating peacefulness. So obviously my mudra with that was chin mudra. Last week in class, I was teaching about the mythology of Lakshmi. So obviously my mudra was Padma, the lotus mudra, because Lakshmi arose out of Padma, the lotus. And then it means every time we return to that mudra in the class, it is returning to like an anchor, anchoring the remembrance of that theme. It embodies the theme. So what is the mudra that relates to your theme? Now, of course, if you've chosen something very physical, like this week in my in-person classes, I was teaching the pillars of strength. I didn't have a mudra. This section wasn't relevant for what I was teaching this week. If it's relevant, what is your chosen mudra? My friend Lauren Gray has created a beautiful deck, card deck, with all of the mudras in them, all of them, all of them, a large chunk of them. I don't think all would be possible, but she's got a long way towards it. So I will drop a link to that somewhere, or if Lauren can drop it into the comments, her mudra deck is beautiful. What is the Sanskrit name of the mudra? What is the English name? So as I said, I was working with Padma mudra last week, the lotus mudra. And then I've asked you in your framework, I love this mudra because when you are introducing something new and different to a class, especially if your class has got lots of beginners in it, if you can introduce it with a little bit of passion and spark, it helps people go along with you. It helps inspire them to experience it. So it's really good to think, why do I love this mudra? How does it feel to me? And you can share that. Then the third section is, we're going to come back to mudra, but so step 1, choose your muse. Step 2, maybe select a mudra to work with your muse, your theme. Step 3, potentially, again, this is about layering depth, select a mantra or affirmation or intention. And I would love to ask you to be considered with your use of the word mantra. For me, mantras are sacred Sanskrit utterances. We then have affirmations. We then have intentions. We then have mottos. For me, like this morning in class, I was working with an affirmation. I choose peacefulness. I would never call that a mantra. I would never say our mantra for today is I choose peacefulness. No, it was an intention. Or is it a motto? Is it an affirmation? We did use a mantra this morning, Om Shanti. So we had the mantra Om Shanti, and this morning we had the intention, I choose peacefulness. So just be really clear with that. Is it a mantra? Is it an affirmation? Is it intention? Choose one. Choose a mantra, choose an affirmation, choose an intention that relates with both the theme and the mudrā. And then that's the first place you can start to bring it in, holding your mudrā, connecting with your breath on your inhale silently or out loud, reciting your mantra or affirmation. Keep it short, repeatable, seed-like. Then your box, my mantra affirmation is. Step 4, create a recurring gesture, movement phrase using the mudrā. This is a real little signature of mine. I'd love to gift it to you. I call this a movement motif. So it's the way once I've sat with my mudrā and felt it, I then start to find a way that I can move my hands, move with the mudrā in rhythm of my breath. And then it takes that mudrā from being something static to something I'm starting to feel, move, express with. And then this becomes a little motif. I normally set it up in my warm-up, and then I'll revisit that movement. Think of it like a little creative phrase or movement meditation. I'll return to it in a standing flow, maybe in Tadasana or interwoven into a half sun salutation. And then I'll often return to the mudra on its own after Shavasana. And then this little movement motif weaves its way through your whole class, just like in music. Most of you know I'm a musician, I'm a harpist, been a musician longer than I've been a yoga teacher, and I've been a yoga teacher a long time. But in music, it is the motifs that hold a piece of music together. And it's movement motifs in a class that really give that same cohesive journey and experience feeling. I put a really short reel up on Instagram, just at Laura Green Yoga, this week, which was a moving with mudra, moving with Padma, the lotus mudra. And you'll see how I created a movement meditation seated, how I brought that back in a half sun salutation, and how then I returned to that in a standing flow in a lunge sequence. And it just really brings this cohesive feeling to your class. And it's a place you can get creative with simplicity, because it's just gentle movement with a mudra. Step 5, think about a focal pose. A lot of people use the phrase peak pose. I'm trying to journey away from that because peak shows hierarchical and it makes it think it has to be hard. A focal pose could be Shavasana. Your entire class is designed for how could you make Shavasana even sweeter today? How could you make Shavasana more accessible for people who maybe struggle with it? A focal pose could be Trikonasana, triangle pose. A focal pose could be something more challenging like Camel Ustrasana. Or it could be Paschimottanasana, your seated forward bend. How do you make a whole class focused on journeying to Paschimottanasana, your seated forward bend? In a way that feels more accessible, more enjoyable, more relaxed. And then Paschimottanasana, it means west stretch. And is it about turning to the west? Maybe. But it's also about, in yoga, we have the front side of the body is connected with the east. The back side of the body is connected with the west. The sun rises in the east. The front of my body sets behind me in the back of my body in the west. And Paschimottanasana stretches out the whole back of the body, the west aspect. Got a whole class ready to weave into something there. Okay, so your focal pose. And sometimes, yeah, I'll pick that first. Often I don't. I'll come here and go, okay, so what's my theme? What's my mudra? What's my intention? Okay, what pose does this journey me towards? What pose is an embodiment of this theme. So name your focal pose that distills the theme. Also note what asana category it's in. So if it was, say, Paschimottanasana, straight-legged seated forward fold, okay, that is in forward folds, that category. If my focal pose is Ardha Chandrasana, half moon, okay, that's in the category of balances. If my focal pose is Ustrasana, camel, okay, that's in the category of back bends. It's just important to take a pause on that. I know it's obvious, but to lock it in. And then you think, my focal pose is, the focal pose category is. Then 6, think about supportive shapes. And I say shapes, not just asanas, because it be in the transitions and you have place for creativity. So identifying 2 to 3 really closely related postures, movements to your focal asana. So related that maybe they just look like cousins if they were in the same family, but they are simpler, related shapes that you can sprinkle through the warm-up and through the standing pose that hint at the focal pose. So say my focal pose was Ardha Chandrasana, half moon. What are the 2 to 3 supported, related cousins? It would be, say, gate pose, kneeling gate pose with one arm to the side, for instance. So what are the related, easier, more accessible versions of that shape? And my supportive postures are. Then 7, body prep. Choose 2 to 3 body regions that need to be prepared for that focal pose. So again, if it is Ardha Chandrasana, half moon, I need to prepare significantly the hamstrings, and I need to open up the hip. Okay? So then, yes, other body parts are involved. It's a balance, there's other things, but majorly, it's going to be a big hamstring stretch and that top hip externally rotating. Then once you've identified those 2 to 3 body regions that need to be prepped for your focal pose, for each, think about 2 to 3 specific postures that achieve that. So what's that hamstring stretch going to be? What's going to be opening the hip? It could just be warrior 2. Warrior 2 with that external hip rotation. Trikonasana with that plus the hamstring stretch that preparing me for Ardha Chandrasana, half moon. This creates a layered integrity in the build-up. So then writing down, what are my key body regions and what are my key postures that will prepare that body region? Then technical thread. Select one piece of technique that you want to be refining in that class. Again, taking Ardha Chandrasana, there's loads of technique in there. Stability of the ankle for balance, engaging the glutes as the driver for that top hip rising, having a drishti to help with the balance, how to engage your core abdominal muscles to support balance there. There's lots of things, but you can't teach everything in one class or your students won't retain it. So select one piece of technique that you want to refine in relation to that focal pose today. So then find 2 to 3 postures that you're going to teach earlier in the class that will give you opportunities to practice and explore that technique in an easier place than the focal pose. So my technique focus, the key postures that explore this. And then that might seem like quite a bit of background prep. And of my 20 minutes, honestly, that will take 15 of it. And then I'll have in front of me one blank piece of paper with all of those poses, ideas just scribbled on it in a little creative dump. Then I come to put it together. And at this point, you're just picking those poses out and plugging them into the sequence. The sequence itself then creates itself rather than you getting creative and thinking it up and creating the arc of the sequence all at the same time. When you do this massive brainstorm, then you just plug it in to the different parts of your class. So then I get to this final step. It takes me the 5 minutes, 9, create your class art. So at this point, I will take an A4 piece of paper and I will turn it landscape. I will get my ruler and divide that A4 landscape piece of paper into 4 lines. This is for a 60-minute class. I add another 2 lines on the back of the page if it's a 90-minute class. Then I know that roughly that's 4 time blocks. So 4 lines, 4 time blocks for my class. Each line should take roughly 15 minutes. My classes are never planned bang on to the 60 minutes. I'm either cutting or adding something as I go, but where I know each line should take me roughly 15 minutes, I can cut and adapt as I go. So then you've got your blank piece of paper turned A4, split into 4 lines. Line 1 is when I center, connect, and warm up. Center, I find a simple opening shape, seated cross-legged or just a comfortable seat. Lying down, child's pose, standing, somewhere still where I'm going to center on my breath and center into the present moment. Connect to my body, connect with my breath, and then come through my warm-up poses that are already in my brainstorm creative piece because they're what are helping me prepare. It's got my mudrā, it's got my movement motif. Line 2 is then sun salutations, if you're doing them, the standing poses, and any standing flows. Line 3 is when I'm really now starting to head to the focal pose. It will probably have the same family category of postures that build to the focal pose. So if my focal pose is Ardha Chandrasana half moon, I'm going to start in this third bit to be having like my tree pose, because it's a balance. Or if it's Ustrasana, camel, I might be having here lying on the tummy, bow pose, one-legged bow pose, two-legged bow pose, then up to kneeling for tiger pose where you take the back leg. Then maybe it's got the standing balance of Natarajasana. Then it's maybe got my Ustrasana. So it's often got poses within that same category, especially if I haven't been able to seed them through the standing poses and flow before. Line 3 is counterposing, seated asanas, reclining asanas, shavasana. Then the final piece in the puddle, final piece in the puddle, that wasn't right. Final piece in the picture, I don't know where I was going. Anyway, 10, close the circle. So after shavasana, coming back up to seated, return to your theme. Maybe return to the mantra and the mudrā and offer a final takeaway, reflection, homework, thought. So then you have how I close my class. So just coming out of the screen share, that is that 20-minute framework for theming classes in less time with more depth, more intention, more meaning, more of your unique brilliance. So as I said, I was talking you through how I do it. I have created that into a PDF framework so you can just plug and play. I can guide you through it. You can plug and play. It will be available on my website. If you're listening live, give me half an hour. If you're listening to the replay, it will be ready for you now. www.lauragreenyoga.co.uk/framework. Now, I also have an on-demand course called The Pillars or Foundations of Sequencing. And it is in my on-demand course vault. So in my on-demand course vault, there's all of my CPD courses and you can go and get it in there. It's a 4-hour training. In the on-demand course vault, it's reduced down to £52. And for August, we have a buy one, get one free. So you can buy that Foundations of Sequencing course and get any other training in there that is of the same or lesser value completely and utterly for free. All you do is email me and say which one you want. So if you have enjoyed today, go get yourself that framework. If you're like, oh, I'm enjoying this, but I need to learn more, maybe you weren't really taught how to do sequencing in your yoga teacher training, go and get that 4-hour CPD, £52, the foundations of sequencing, and it's really good. I got such good feedback on that CPD course, and then teachers were implementing it and then them getting really good feedback from their students. It is a bit of gold ready and waiting for you when you've got 4 hours to tackle it. If you've liked today, please share it, drop me a comment, follow the podcast. We're here for you every single week. Otherwise, bye for now, my loves. Go get that framework, www.lauragreenyoga.co.uk/framework. Bye for now.